Steve Anderson and Gloria Aikenhead and Heidi Bakhorn and Rob Carter, and we've got Patricia Wood wasn't able to be here. She's ill. Nathan Chappelle is working, and Nikki Byer for some reason went off to Wyoming, and we don't understand that. Okay.
We had only about four and a half days in country, but we did an awful lot in those 4.5 days. We saw a lot of Athens and also Corinth. We went to the Acropolis, which is probably the major site in Athens. We did that. Actually, it was very fortunate. It turned out that Monday was a national holiday, so all of the ancient sites were free, so we didn't have to pay to get in. And so John says, hey, you know what? Let's go do that Monday morning. So we did that. We went and saw the Acropolis. We got to see the Acropolis Museum. We also took a visit to, is it called Mars Hill?
Yeah.
Mars Hill. And then we also got to go to the home of some new Christians on Monday. And it was really interesting. We had, it was Jordanian. Masa? Is that right? Matzah. Okay. And so that was lamb and rice and nuts. And then also some side dishes and a kind of a soup that they pour over the dish. So that was really interesting for us. You know, traditional Middle Eastern style. They laid it out on the floor and we all sat around it. But it was really interesting, and we got to hear the testimonies of the new Christians. So that was very interesting as well.
Yes, we served at Caritas. It's a Catholic organization, and I brought their flyer just so I could read some of their facts so you guys get to know a little bit more about the ministry. Caritas stands for Love in Latin. It's active in 165 countries across the globe, and it was established in 1978. As far as in Greece, every day they serve 550 hot meals to adults and children. They have 25 people who use their shower facilities each day. 135 people are given clothes, bed linens, and other necessities. Parents are advised on childcare, and they ensure necessities for minors. 10 people each day get to reach the Help Center to receive psychosocial support and counseling. And both children and adult refugees enjoy free access to a library possessing publications written in Arabic, Farsi, Greek, English, and French. And so it's really just an opportunity to help in a lot of ways. John, the missionary that we came to help, really likes it because based on the amount of people there, he can kind of tell just how busy they are and how many refugees are coming into the country. And they also allow you to witness whenever you want. So he can go there and talk to people about the Bible whenever he serves. And it was just a great opportunity for us to get to be in a new environment and serve and meet a lot of people, give out some gifts.
We went through quite a few blocks of one of the sections of Athens that is predominantly immigrants and refugees. That street is littered with drug needles. And on that right-hand side, that pretty looking doorway, everywhere that we went through that section of town, we were told if you see a doorway with a bright light on top of it, that's a prostitution house. And they were everywhere. And as we walked through there, when we were getting ready to make this walk, John told us it's something that we have to see. We have to see why we're there so we can judge what is taking place and if we're making an impact and the impact that is being made, because there's a huge impact being made. And we were taught to pray for an acronym of hearts. Pray for these people's hearts. And what that stands for is the H is their actual heart, their heart for God. The E is pray for their eyes and their ears to be open so that they could hear and see the Word of God and experience what God can give to them. The A is to change their attitude to match God's attitude towards sin. The R is for release of what is holding them back from accepting Christ. The T is that there would be transformation in their lives. And the S is that we would pray for those who were sent. And as we made this walk, we were surrounded by darkness. We were surrounded by oppression and depression and homelessness, drug use. You could hear arguments going on, yelling and screaming taking place, different languages being spoken, and peddlers coming up trying to sell you things or give you things on the street. And the whole time we're making this walk, we were in a group. We weren't walking real fast, but we weren't letting the grass grow underneath our feet either. but we weren't talking to each other. We were just talking to God and talking to Christ, what we were seeing, and hopefully we could make some kind of an impact in this community. And we talked about it afterwards as well. While we were surrounded by that, we felt protected the whole time. You could feel the Spirit was with us and was moving us as we went through. It was a fantastic experience, that part of it.
So on Wednesday of our trip, we took a trip to Corinth, and we actually took 14 or 15 new believers with us. And we went over to ancient Corinth, which is really cool because, in Acts it talks about Paul going to Athens and then taking a ship over to Corinth. And so we were in Corinth for most of the day. See the Roman ruins, pretty impressive, some of the buildings and structures they had. We also went up to the castle of Corinth, which is way up on a high hill. Most of these city-states 2,000 years ago or more had a fortified structure on a high area, and so if they were attacked by another city-state, all the villagers would go up into the castle, and so that's what we did. We hiked way up, and it was a long way, and we hiked all the way up into the castle and got to see it, and that was that's what the Acropolis was. We talked about the Acropolis earlier in Athens. Well, this was the Corinthian version of a high castle. So that was really interesting too. And we also made a stop on the way back to the shore of the Mediterranean, and that's where they believe that Paul landed when he came to Corinth. So that was an interesting stop too on Wednesday.
Some of the things that we saw with that church that is sprouting up there is the missionaries that we were over there with don't run their church. They allow them to run their own church. So the pastor was an Iraqi who's been a Christian for between 4 and 6 years, he said. And we got to watch a youth group that they had just barely started up, probably like a month before we got there.
Yeah.
And they were anywhere from, there was 14 of the kids from about 14 years old to 6 years old. And we watched them sing a song. We watched them do a lesson. Their lesson was Cain and Abel. They watched a video in Arabic about Cain and Abel. And then they had a discussion, and they had to decide what the message of the lesson was, who was God in the lesson, who was man in the lesson, and what was the sin that lesson was teaching them to avoid and to keep out of their lives. And it was very cool watching the interaction with these kids. We couldn't understand a word they were saying, but kids laugh in the same language. Every language on earth, they laugh the same. And when you see them interact and start laughing and enjoying and learning, you could tell they're learning. And you could tell the interaction that it was something that they were interested in.
Yep. And something that John was telling us that's really interesting is they train people from that language group or that people group, and then they go out and they build a church. And so there's a lot of little churches all over Athens that are being started by these people that they're training. And so it's really interesting how that works, and it's multiplying just like Jesus did with the disciples, just like Paul did as he visited all the villages on his missionary trips. So it's really interesting that how that's growing, house churches all over Athens, starting from New Hope Ministries and moving out into the public. So we got a chance to serve a couple days. We got a chance to go with the new believers. Because of the language barriers, it was difficult for us. I mean, Nathan isn't here, but he went back and sat in the back of the bus with the young guys, and they were trading email addresses and text messages and stuff back and forth. So, but for some of us, we didn't have a whole bunch of interaction with them. I think because we only had 4.5 days, we didn't really get a chance to. I really wanted to see where the new refugees come in and get to see that part of it. We didn't get to see that, but we did get to see what they're doing in Athens and some really important work. The other thing we discussed was Rob just talked about the kids. You know, you got these parents that come in and they're switching from Muslim to Christian, but we talked a little bit as we were walking through town, we talked a little bit about what that effect is on the kids, right? Last week we were Muslims, this week we're Christians. And so it's difficult to imagine. That's why John told us that they were starting in the beginning. That's why they were talking about Cain and Abel. because they had to start from the beginning to teach them about Christianity and its roots.
I'll actually add on to the kid thing. While we were serving at Caritas, Nikki and I got the opportunity to go up and work in the nursery and watch any kids. And we only ended up having 2 kids, and they had us up there for 4 hours just to keep it open. But while we were there, we looked around at the artwork and everything, and they had a world map on the wall. And each of the kids had drawn their faces and put it where they were from on the map. And they drew little hearts where their family had been spread out throughout the world. And looking at that map, you could just see how spread out and how separated families were. And there was artwork of kids just showing the family separation or them crying. And you could just see the sadness and the hurt and how this is really affecting their lives. And it's a really cool opportunity to be up there and pray for each of the kids who had drawn those pictures and really just get to see it from their perspective.
Talk about the steps.
Oh yeah, they were tracking how far we walked with their Fitbits, Gloria and Nathan. And at the end of it, we had over 135,000 steps and over 205 flights of stairs.
So a lot of walking
4 days.
and a lot of hiking. We even hiked in the rain. That was kind of fun.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, so that was pretty neat when we got to go see some of the ancient structures. One thing about serving at Caritas, we were actually serving, out there with water and washing tables down, and people were coming in waves, and you'd see 30, 40 people at a time, maybe 50 people at a time, and all different languages and all different nationalities. We were right in the middle of downtown Athens. I don't know if I could live that way. People on top of people, apartments and apartments and levels and small little cars parked in the alleys and barely room to walk down. It was quite an interesting experience, but yeah, it was great. We got to see quite a bit, got to do quite a bit.
We want to thank all of you guys for all of your prayers and all your support.
Absolutely.
And if you ever get a chance to go.
Absolutely.